Welcome to Real Talk, Real Estate Discussions with Andrew Kirsh. In each episode, Andrew interviews industry leaders. We'll hear their real-time opinions on today's market, their background, and unique career highlights, and guidance for newcomers to the industry. You can find this show at www.sklarkirsh.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Now here's the host of Real Talk, Andrew Kirsh.
On the next episode of the Real Talk, we have a fantastic discussion with Bill Shopoff, the founder of Shopoff Realty. In an era of ultra specialization, Shopoff bucks the trend by finding value across all asset classes, from hospitality to multifamily to office to retail to everything in between. It's a great discussion that I had with Bill not too long ago, and I know you'll enjoy it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk. Today, I'm here with my good friend and client, Bill Shopoff. Bill, thanks for joining us. Right on the first question, I get a Wi-Fi snag. Bill's in the DFW airport lounge. So can you hear us, Bill?
I can hear you. Sorry about that.
Hey, that's okay. You know, it's live podcasting in 2022. So I know that. So thank you for joining us. You're in the DFW airport lounge. Where are you headed?
Headed back to John Wayne Airport, back home. So
that's great.
Well, just had a day trip over here for some business.
Quick day trip. I know not as glamorous as where you've been for the last 6 to 8 weeks, right?
Far less glamorous, but always happy to come back to Texas. So
fantastic. Well, Bill, I don't think you need any introduction. Founder of Shopoff Realty Investments and one of the largest developers who's based in California. I know your reach is even wider than California, doing deals throughout the United States. And I always like to say that there isn't an asset class that you won't pursue, from land development to vertical construction to large infill office buildings, retail, apartments. You do it all. I mean, I guess my first question is really, how do you, with such a wide scope, how are you able to assess what deals, and how is there enough time in the day to evaluate all the deals that come into your inbox?
it's a great question, Andrew. And I think if I had it over again, I'd probably be like a lot of other people and specialize and just do multifamily or just do office. But it's how I cut my teeth in the business. When I started the firm 30 years ago, we were buying pools of assets from the Resolution Trust Corporation, the RTC, when they were cleaning up the savings and loan debacle. And I tell people we literally owned everything from churches to synagogues to bowling alleys. And we owned over a very broad geography. And so I learned, how to understand markets and value, I think at a very quick pace, and I got a good intuition for going to places. But now I do it a little bit different. I've got market specialists. I've got people who know certain product type better than other things they do. So if I'm doing a mall conversion, I've got a guy in my firm, and he's done that for other, in other points in his career. I've obviously got people who are specialists in the land entitlement business, but construction specialists. So it's now, the firm's gotten, larger in scale. We're 70, 75 people today. And as you said, we do work, heavily concentrated in the West and Southwest, but we literally own properties coast to coast. I mean, we own everything from, California, quite a bit in Nevada, up into the Midwest and over to Charlotte, North Carolina. So we've got a broad reach.
You must get flooded with emails from brokers across every asset class, across every market in the country.
I don't even know. I mean, I get 400 or 500 emails a day, and probably 200 of those are property opportunities. And I don't spend as much time as I used to on that. I've got a couple of acquisition folks, and they filter through a lot of it. If I see something interesting, I'll push the email over. The majority of opportunities that we really pursue are story opportunities, and I think the brokers that we do business with understand that we'll tackle things that are a little bit different. We tend to do more challenging assets where our pay is better if we can solve a problem. And we've gotten a bit of a reputation for that. I guess that's a good reputation, but sometimes it's gives us pause, because we can solve a lot of problems. I'm not sure today we want to solve as many problems. I think we'd like to hit the easy button once in a while, but it doesn't really happen much. So.
I don't even think the word easy is in your vocabulary, but what is in your vocabulary is the word yes, where you always feel like you can solve problems. Like you said, there's always you don't accept no from my interactions with you, and you're very creative. And so in doing so many different types of transactions, from development, from value add, from retail to hotel to industrial, is there a common theme that you see in all of these deals? Is it just the value that you can create, and that's the common theme?
Well, I think, like I said, I think we're a bit of a story buyer. If we see a unique opportunity, I think that's one thing. In the last, probably decade, we've also taken our focus to what I would consider to be better quality assets. I probably early in my career, I might have followed the early days, and I'll flatter myself to say that I could be anything like him. But when Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger got started, they used to call it their cigar butt theory. They'd buy a company at a good price and get the last few puffs out of the cigar butt. And what they've done is they've changed their theory over time and realized buying better assets and better quality with longevity and some brand awareness that had what they call a moat around it. And I would say that's a little bit more of what we're trying to do today, where we're looking for very unique assets that we can do something with them that others can't, and they're irreplaceable. I've told my team, if I want to buy a stock, I can wait for the entry point. I may never get there, but the share of stock's not unique. There's millions and millions of shares of Tesla, for example, and every share is the same. And whether you buy it on Tuesday or Wednesday, it doesn't matter. But if I want to go buy a redevelopment site, we just bought the Westminster Mall in North Orange County. There's one of them, and so if you want to buy that opportunity, there's one of that opportunity, and you have to strike while the iron's hot. And people are like, well, you could have waited. Maybe you bought it cheaper. I said, yeah, maybe I would have bought it cheaper, but maybe I wouldn't have bought it at all. And if I'm buying an asset, in that case, I'm buying an asset that potentially could have a lifetime value to me that we would redevelop and hold in perpetuity. Kind of missing it is you can't replace it. So I think we look at different investments we make. We look at a little bit differently, but we are value driven. And because we do so many different property types, one of the things I tell, people that are trying to sell to me, or we're not really the sellers, but the brokers, is, look, we're not as smart as some of the other guys because they're specialists. So we just have to buy at a wider margin to make up for, anything that we might have missed or a mistake we might make along the way, because we're not multifamily geniuses. We're good at it, but that's not all we do all day long. I think we're really good at it, by the way, but I think we do most things really well. And if we don't think we can do them well, we probably don't do them at all. And I will say there's a couple of things we probably tried to do that we wish we hadn't. Over the last 30 years, I've bought and sold over 1,000 assets, which is, in my mind, it's a pretty remarkable track record. So
you've kept a lot of title companies, brokers, law firms busy with 1,000 assets. I'm sure no one will ever get mad at being compared to one of the wealthiest people in the world. But when you mentioned, when you were talking about there's very few of these assets like the Westminster Mall, that's exactly what Steve Ballmer said when he bought the Clippers. There are only 30 basketball teams. And if I overspend, in his case, maybe it was several hundred million, and people said, what are you doing spending $2 billion on a basketball team when the next person presumably was going to only spend $1.5 billion or $1.6 billion? He said, there's only 30 of them and I want it. And I wanted to make sure that I got this asset. So,
yeah, I think if you've got, he also wanted to be out of Staples Arena, and he bought the Forum for $250 million.
Yeah.
The Madison Square Gardens bought for $20 million. So
he didn't want anyone objecting to the stadium that he's building down the road.
Yeah, you have a focus and a vision and a dream for your business, and you try to build on that. And I think that's what I've tried to do, for the last 40 plus years in business and 30 with Shopoff Realty Investments. And I've made plenty of mistakes. We could do a whole episode on my mistakes. My worst, I wouldn't say my worst, but the worst ratio. I bought a rundown apartment building for $72,000, 96 unit rundown apartment building, and I lost millions on that deal. Like, how do you buy something for 72,000 and lose millions? I could write a book just on that one. But we did. But I learned a lot from it. And, you could throw in the towel and you could say, God, I should never do that again. Or you could say, man, that was an expensive lesson. It was a lot more than going to the best colleges in the country. Let's go create some value with what we learned from it. And we've gone on to do that. And we learned a lot from that particular mistake that we made.
Yeah, well, you learn from your mistakes and you gain confidence from your successes. Someone once told me. I want to get into your perspective on today's market and some of the truly remarkable developments that you have going on currently. But before we do all that, I want the audience to learn more about Bill Shopoff, where you came from, how you got into real estate. So I know you weren't born in California, but you don't have an accent, but maybe it comes out after a few glasses of wine. So where are you from?
Well, I actually was born in New York State, in Western New York, and then I moved to Texas when I was 5. Okay. And I lived in Texas from 5 to 44, Dallas, a little bit in Houston, and then in 75 I wandered down the road to Austin, Texas, to this little sleepy town that when I moved there was about 250,000 people, and 50,000 of them went to the university. So the town was the university. It's not that way anymore. I mean, the university is important to Austin, but it's not the center of the universe. And I got a couple degrees from the University of Texas. I never intended to go into real estate. I actually, I got an undergraduate degree in marine biology. And, I was going to be the next Jacques Cousteau. And I was days away from going to graduate school and getting my PhD. And I was like, whoa, this is the wrong pathway. My dad was a businessman. My older brothers were already in business, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll go back. And so I went back and did a year of undergrad and then got into the MBA program at Texas. But even at that, I was thinking, I'll go, I'm going to go to Wall Street. I'm going to be an investment banker. That's what I wanted to do. And I actually got an offer from Goldman Sachs to be a bond trader, but it was to move to Houston. And at the time, my then ex-wife, then wife, now ex-wife, was like, "There's no way we're going to Houston." I'm like, "Well, yeah, but it's Goldman Sachs," and to stay in Austin, the only offers I got were terrible offers. I mean, it was 1981. I think the best offer I got, Andrew, was like $13,500 a year to be a controller for a small business, and they wanted me to pay the placement agent fee.
You had to
they
pay.
wanted me to pay the fee, and I was already making more than that as a part-time broker. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this real estate gig. Maybe I can make something of it. And,
what was wrong with Houston in 1980? Your wife didn't want to.
Well, she was from New York City. So
I see.
Austin was okay, but Houston was not so
Okay.
to go.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with
The little-
Houston, but it turned out okay for me. Obviously we had some bumps in the road. I've had some successes and failures, but in 92, 30 years ago, I founded this company with 3 partners, and it's an unbelievable story. I mean, four of us put $250 in the kitty in May of 1992, and I bought the last partner out in 2004, and I can't remember the precise number, Andrew, but it was in the order of magnitude about $7 or $8 million for his interest in the company. So his 250 did pretty well.
That's a good IRR, a good multiple.
And he got a few distributions along the way too.
I'm
but
sure.
I will say I got no regrets. I probably overpaid him, but he was a very good friend of mine, and we remain friends today. We've been friends since we were 18, and I'm not 18 anymore. I just got my Medicare card, so thank you for paying for my insurance. I appreciate it. So then I moved to California about 21 years ago. Founded the company in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
But
So
I moved to California.
What brought you? Why make the move from California or from Texas to California?
So we bought a number of properties in Southern California. Started with a large portfolio from the Resolution Trust Corporation. Mm-hmm. Then we bought a couple of single assets, and the gentleman that I had working for me at the time that was managing those properties liked my business so much he decided to make it his own and stole about $4 or $5 million from me. And so I came out to clean up the business, set him for a little time out at the federal penitentiary, and I don't think anybody's stolen from me since then.
I understand why. You should have a link on your website as to what happened to that guy.
Yeah, but it turned out well for me, even though it was hard. I commuted to California for about 3 years, trying to run the assets and clean them up, and I thought I could sell them off. And being who I am, the deals got bigger instead of smaller. And I bought more, and in 2001, my family and I decided to make the move, and over time we actually shut down our Texas operation, and now we're wholly based in Orange County in Irvine. Although I've got employees around the country, but our corporate office is in Irvine.
What was the 1 or 2 transactions in your career where once you completed that deal, you sort of looked in the mirror and said, I've made it. This feels pretty good. I know I can do this as a living.
There were a number of them, but I'll say, the pivot point for me was in late 1994. We got qualified. You had to get qualified to bid because we were bidding on a large pool where the RTC, the federal government, you, the taxpayers, everybody on this podcast is been one of my investors de facto because I made money for them through the Treasury or through the FDIC, and we bid on 125 loan portfolio in Texas and the surrounding states, and it was a pretty good sized deal. And I know our bid was less than 100,000 over the cover bid on a very large transaction, and we had to put up a $600,000 deposit, non-refundable, and we had 21 days to close. And I think we needed, there was some leverage provided by the government. I think we needed like 13 million in equity, and we didn't have it when we bid, and we didn't have it when we put up the deposit, and we had 21 days to get it. And so we started making phone calls, and we kind of had a 2-tier approach. One was try to raise at high net worth, and the other was go institutional. And we made a cold call to Credit Suisse, at that time, Credit Suisse First Boston. They took the call on a Friday afternoon. They said, sounds great. This'll date me, Andrew. I sent floppy disks in FedEx because there wasn't a way to do large files on the internet.
Sure.
We do today. And I
Yeah.
sent them overnight for Saturday delivery. The guys called us back, Saturday midday and said, "Look, we'll be in your office Monday morning. If our file review matches your model, we're in." And they showed up,
Wow.
and at noon on Monday, they shook hands. And I've had a relationship, actually, not with the firm, but I still do business with the lead guy from that team to this day, since 1994, which I think is, for me, remarkable that, we've had a friendship and a relationship for now 28 years. Our kids are the same age, and we've watched them grow up, and so that was one. And then I'd say the other one was my Uptown Newport project. I got a chance to buy 25 acres with a semiconductor chip plant in Newport Beach back in, I started pursuing it in 2009, tied it up in 2010. I tied up a $26 or $7 million deal for $1,000 check.
How did you manage that?
It was a public company, and they'd been through a failed escrow, and they didn't want to do another 8K disclosure. So they entered into what's called an exclusive right to negotiate. And we negotiated the purchase and sale agreement, but they didn't sign it. I didn't sign it. But the agreement was, I put up $1,000. I do my diligence, and then if I'm ready to go hard, they'd sign the purchase and sale agreement. If they got a better offer, in the meantime, they were free to go take it, but they had to pay me a $2 million breakup fee.
Right. That's a pretty good deal.
$1,000 versus $2 million. It was a pretty good
That's
deal.
a great deal. You'll take that any day of the week.
And that project has generated, well into 9 figures in profits for the, the various investors that have been involved in it. We're still involved in it today, building out the apartments on it. And ultimately, it'll be about 1,250 units of apartments and condos, most of which.
You hear these stories, and it's like every next generation feels that it was easier for the prior generation to either meet capital, get deals done, different time period. Do you believe that? Or if you were starting out today, would it be harder, or is it just the old-fashioned hard work, meeting people, expanding your network, and opportunity will present itself?
Look, I talk to people all the time about this, so let's call it the American dream. You come, you rub 2 nickels together, and you create a business.
Yeah.
It's people try to tell me it's dead, and I'm like, look, I just was on a phone call with a guy who came here in 1975 from Vietnam, by boat family, and he's doing an exchange, and he had 26 million in cash as a farmer.
Yeah.
So I tell you, I think it's still there. Does it take hustle? Yeah, but there's more information available today. You got to be faster because the things that used to be arduous for me to go do, I have to get in a car and drive someplace. Now I get on Google Earth and I look at something and I can make I still got to go see the assets, but I can get pretty far down the road with research and electronic media and I still got to see the neighborhood and get there and touch and feel it, and I want to smell the air. I just bought a dairy farm. You want to smell the cow poo and know what it was and what it's going to be. But I would say, it's not easy, but it's not harder. Look, it's not easy to be successful in business. Look, I'm mentoring a young man right now who's playing in the NFL. Like you talk about a small group of people, and I keep reminding him, like, you can't just be great to play in the NFL, because there's a lot of great players. You got to be outstanding. You got to be outstanding every day. You got to be better. You got to be 1% better than the next best guy.
I'm so intrigued,
and that's what I think it is in business. Like I think it's a simple formula. I'll quote one of my friends. When every time we're in the paper, one of my friends will, somebody will call this broker friend of mine and say, God damn it, how did Bill do that again? And he said, this is his quote, so I'm trying to put it in the third person, but he says, well, let's see, he gets up earlier than you, he stays up later, he works harder, he might be smarter, and he's completely tenacious and doesn't let go of an opportunity. I think if people came up and did that formula, and I don't even think like the intellect is probably the least valuable of all those things. If it was about smart, everybody in Mensa would be a millionaire.
Yeah.
And we both know plenty of smart people way smarter than you and and I think of us as probably, two reasonably intellectual people. And I know a lot of people are much brighter than me who can't figure out how to make any money because that's just not their DNA.
Well,
So
do you know how to use Excel well, let me just start. Like, do you use Excel
yeah,
personally?
I personally use Excel
At a high functioning level, because other real estate people that I know will admit that they can turn it on, but that's about it.
No, I'm pretty functional.
You are.
I mean,
You
I
rely on
have,
it.
I would say 5 years ago, I was probably the number one or two guy in my shop.
Wow.
Today I'm not. Today I'm not in the top, I might not be in the top 10 in the shop, but my high point of my day is when I show a shortcut to I've got a couple of whiz bang analysts and I can still show them a shortcut they don't know.
Yeah.
Years ago, I actually remember one night, my wife tells this story, but a new version of Excel came out and I was sitting in the bedroom reading the manual and I was like, you got to come over here, man. This is amazing. Let me show you this. And my wife was like, you're out of your
good
mind.
Bedroom talk.
Yeah. But I do still, I can maneuver my way around, but I'm not, and I do have a skill which is I can tell whether the spreadsheet is working right or not. Like I can find a bust in a spreadsheet.
I'm sure you encounter people, and I do on a daily basis, extremely successful real estate professionals who don't use that technology, don't use Excel, and just use the back of an envelope and can tell this will work or not. And they have people that can crunch the numbers, but it's very interesting to know that the head of the company can do this.
I can do it, but I'll say that I'm mostly about using a yellow pad and an HP 12C.
Yeah.
Because I want to understand it at the the Excel level, but if I can't see it in the static world of I got to put this many dollars in and it's worth this much when it's done, like if I can't figure it out at that level, and again I'd go back to quoting my my hero Warren Buffett. He says, look, if you got to go to 3 decimal points to figure it out, you're probably not smart enough to do the deal, because you can make Excel do anything you want it to do. It's like, Argus is like the industry standard for, commercial properties. And, I would say the average person, the average person, not people really know it, but the average person that gets Argus output thinks that's a real forecast. And I'm like, well, it's not. It's probability theory. Like there's zero chance. What I tell people is there's zero chance that the model I'm using is going to be accurate.
Sure.
The only time it might be accurate is if I'm buying a long-term triple net lease deal with long-term, financing that self-amortizes. Maybe I get it right on that. But anything else, like it's a forecast, and you hope you're better than the weatherman.
Yeah. Well, maybe in LA they're correct, but not
in LA. LA is a pretty good place to be a weatherman.
To be a weather person, absolutely. We did have a little bit of rain yesterday, remarkably. So, is the way you capitalize deals, the way you get equity, seems very consistent with the broad nature of the types of deals that you're pursuing. I mean, you have institutional joint venture partners, you have a fund, you have syndications, high net worth. I mean, there isn't a capital formula that that you just rely upon, while like other real estate owner operators, they're all in on institutional JVs, or they're all in on their fund. Talk to us about the different types of capital you use and why you use that strategy.
Well, the reason I do it is because once upon a time I had, strictly institutional, and I really had one or two relationships. And then, one day I chased a very large transaction for about 3 years and finally landed it. I had the Turtle Bay Resort on the North Shore of Oahu that I got under contract from a Japanese bank for like $65 million. And I took it to Credit Suisse, who was my partner at the time, and they were all in on it. And then they lost $2 billion in a day in a Russian bond trade, and business was closed. And I was like, all of a sudden, now I got a deal and I don't have any capital. And so I said, I don't ever want to be dependent on one type of capital. And so I have a multi-stooled approach. We raise, a fund through the independent broker-dealer channel. We raise single asset syndications through that same channel, but also through family offices and direct high net worth. And then we have our institutional relationships. And over the course of the history of the company, we've done business with about 30 different institutional partners because they ebb and flow. I say, when you go talk to your institutional partners and you say, what do you guys want? Oh, we're looking for Coca-Cola. And I go out and I round up a 6-pack of Coca-Cola, and they're like, well, we kind of want Diet Pepsi this week. We filled up our quota of Coca-Cola. And so I don't ever want to be shut out of the market, because sometimes when they're out of the market is when the best deals happen. And that's what's happened in the last couple of months.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because
it's a good segue to that. So.
Totally. I mean, the summer, I feel like the entire institutional real estate private equity world was off in Europe for not just a 1 or 2 week vacation, but a 6 to 8 week vacation. I personally thought they'd come back in mid to late August. We'd cross Labor Day, school would be back in session, and the private equity folks would say, okay, we got to get to a certain number. We got to just deploy a certain amount of capital to make our year-end goals. And we'd have a normal fourth quarter, which in our business tends to be the busiest quarter of the calendar year. Turns out I was not correct, that there is no price discovery, at least what I'm seeing. Institutions have not come back into the market, and they're looking 1 to 2 quarters ahead and saying we may not transact until early to mid 2023. And so people are pivoting. They're seeing some deals, but there's not a lot of price discovery. So what's your take on today's market as we sit here?
Well, I think, look, the market turned on a dime. We went from we're all in for all your deals to we're not in for any of your deals.
Right. Although overnight.
Overnight. And I've seen it before. I managed to get a large transaction capitalized, but I can tell you it was arduous. We got multiple term sheets kind of in discussion, but never really got them generated. We were buying an industrial piece of land and, farmland to industrial over in Mesa, Arizona. I was able to renegotiate the price from $96 million to $70 million. And that kind of made the deal happen. But it started with, I had a stretch senior mortgage. One of my mezz lenders was going to do basically do an all-inclusive deal and give us a, stretch senior. And we had some equity to go with it. And that didn't materialize. That fell apart. Then they came back and said, well, instead of 65, 70%, we'll do 55%. So then I put some mezz behind that. Then my mezz decided it actually liked the deal enough that it took over the senior position. And I had a pref equity piece behind that. And in 6 days before closing, the pref equity piece that was $17.5 million walked. And we closed on schedule.
That's amazing.
Wow. From Europe, began in Athens when it fell apart, and I ended in Lake Como. And sitting by the lake, I put the deal back together. Started with going back to the seller and asking them to carry a second, and then got that agreed to. And then my group that was originally just going to be mezz, then became the senior, became a super stretch senior, and filled the entire gap. And that was Mavic out of New York, and the guys were awesome. I give them a plug because they went from originally saying they're going to do 22 million to doing I think they ended up with $81.5 million into the deal. So they funded basically the majority of the cap stack.
I think they've earned a nice bottle of wine out of your wine cellar for the holidays.
I'm going to New York in a couple of weeks for a dinner, and I will be carrying something for dinner. So
yes, I had a feeling you would. Well, stressful times, but at least you had a nice view.
Yeah, but it's look, I think that the market there's some deal flow. I will say we're looking right now, but we bit off a lot already this year, and I think we'll close maybe 2 more transactions on the buy side before the end of the year. We've got a 2 major sales happening, and and knock on wood, those are going to happen. We have between them, it's one will happen this year, the other will probably happen in Q1, but between them it's about 600 million, and so we're pretty excited about that. And one is a lot of hard money, so it's not going anywhere, and they like their buy and we like the sale. And the other is a unique deal where I'm selling to a user that's not swayed by the market. It's a unique asset, and they're going to pay me a pretty significant price tag, which could be really good for me because I'll exchange that particular capital. The other's institutional partner capital, and we'll just take our money. But the other assets, private capital deal, and we'll exchange out of it. And we made the deal 2 months ago, and we'll probably close it December, January. And my view is we probably made $60-80 million in savings, what we'll exchange into. So it could be for me it's kind of a life-changing number for a transaction that was already heading the right way. And if I think I'm going to be able to buy with my exchange capital maybe 400 million of assets that will cost me 320, and of assets if I bought it in June or July. So and I'll probably maybe even better than that because because you talked about that lack of price discovery. I think my sellers that I'm going to transact with are people who have to sell. Mm-hmm. And so the people who don't have to sell, they're not in the market right now. I mean, You're seeing every day. If you read the real estate alert every week, people are pulling sales down. There was a list of buildings that were on the market in Houston, all different sellers, but it was a couple billion worth of buildings, and none of them have traded. So in the office space.
Yes, sellers still remember just 4 or 5 months ago of what the values were. And unless you have to sell, like in your case, why sell? So when do you think we will see the uptick? Not necessarily the transactional volume that we experienced in 2021 or the first quarter of 2022, but just a normal cycle of real estate, a normal velocity of real estate transactions. What is it going to take?
Well, I think I'll go in the danger zone here. I think the Fed will capitulate, and interest rates will start moving the other way. And I'll make my bold forecast here, Andrew. Rates are going to be lower next summer than they are today. I think you'll have a conceptually. I hate to make a precise forecast, but I wouldn't be shocked to see a 10-year at 250 next summer, maybe even lower, because I think the Fed's going to completely overshoot, and then their only solution is cut rates. I think it'll be second quarter next year because people will start entering into deals in the first quarter. They won't really start closing until the second quarter. I think Q1 you'll see some transactions. I think the first quarter is going to be people who have to transact, and the second quarter will be people who can transact in reality. I mean, I remember I was talking to a broker, oh God, probably back in May or June, just as the market started to move, started to shift. And, they had a deal in escrow, and, buyer tried to go from it was 25 basis point delta in the retrade, but it was still in like the mid threes on a Amazon type deal. And I was like, and the seller decided not to take like a 3.5 cap deal. And I said, they're going to regret that in the moment. I didn't say it 6 weeks later. I said it, I was talking to the broker. I said, they're going to regret that decision. And you couldn't buy that deal. I'm not sure there's a trade for that deal today, but it's got to be, 4 handle or better, even for Amazon, I'm guessing right now. So I think that, look, I've been doing this for a long time. I've gotten kicked around. The good news is, like I said, I've got some big sales. I like the assets we own. We could buy a couple more things. We've got one thing. We've got our eye on one deal that if it gelled, we would buy it. But I think we're probably gonna take the Christmas season off. I won't be calling you on New Year's Eve like I did a couple of years ago, and we're pulling each other's hair out because trying to get a deal closed. I think we officially closed the last deal in the Pacific time zone that year.
I remember that vividly. And when you sign up to be in the real estate business or as a real estate attorney, you just know the final few days of the calendar year, it's going to be busy, and for tax purposes, and because sometimes those are when you can strike the best deals.
Yeah, look, we'll say we're not looking, but I will tell you, I've been in these times of stress or distress, and I'll say, we're done for the year. But I can tell you, in the last 30 years, I've closed deals more often than not. Probably in the 30 years, I'll bet 25 of those years I've closed a deal in the last week of the year. And in at least 5 of those years, Andrew, I've closed a deal in the last week of the year that I wasn't even looking at the first week of the year, first week of the month,
first week of December.
So somebody's bring me in at least
your team
5
loves
times.
you. Your team loves you around. Your team loves you around the holidays.
I remember one year I took a Christmas day, and I almost got away with the whole call before I said something. My wife thought it might have been a social call, and then I slipped with something on my side, and I still catch it about that call today. That was probably 25 years ago. But look, if somebody calls me with the right opportunity, and they call me on December 5th and say it's got to close by the end of the year, there's a price at which I'll go to work. The price is going to feel like I can't lose, and I can go get capital to activate. And my answer is, look, we can always go on holiday, the next week. So I think it's, I hate to be so mercenary about it, but it's business. And if there's an opportunity that we love, we're going to go to work for it. But I think there'll be opportunities here, but it's going to be choppy for a bit. We're likely to go into a recession. I don't think it's going to be a weird recession because it's driven by this monetary issue. That's so the stock market was up 800 points today. On some ridiculous news, just like the other day, it went down 600 points because the employment numbers were good. Like, it's why I do real estate, because I don't understand the stock market. Like, I don't get it. At least I understand if a tenant needs my space and he can afford to pay the rent, I can make a living. And, or a home buyer wants, wants a house in a neighborhood we create. So, we're about filling demand for a customer. We don't create customers. We just fill demand. And we try to guess where that demand is. We try to look for trends. Right now we're doing quite a few retail to other things conversions, mostly retail to residential. But we have one that we're converting retail to creative office. And it's looking like it's going to turn out great. We've got a couple of tenants in line, re-tenanting. The city's going to love us because we're taking a, dark space and going to bring life and jobs back to the area. that feels good about it. I mean, that's the one thing I love about the business. I've been compensated well, but I love that we get to create. And my children are both artists. My son's a dancer, although he's now back in school, go get his doctorate in physical therapy. My daughter's an artist, and and people are like, oh, where'd they get your artistic talent? You don't look that artistic. And I said, well, but I do art. I do art on a pretty big palette. It's different, but I get to design communities and places, and that part's been a pretty fun job. So look,
Yeah,
I came into the business by accident. Are you good?
Yeah, no, continue.
But no, I said I came into the business a little bit by accident, and it's turned out to be a fabulous career. And my kids aren't going to come into the business. Not really a disappointment for me, because you got to love this business, and they didn't love it because they saw how hard it was for me. I worked hard. I worked long hours. I still work long hours. I mean, I got to tell you, I had a different vision, of what my life would be at my age. I thought I'd kick back and, come into the office a couple hours a day. And, I still work I tell people I work half time. I go to work at 7 and I'm done at 7. It's half days. So, and I'm kind of only in jest about that a little bit, but, I'm pulling back a little bit now, but because I've got a great team. But I love the business, so it's been good to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's great to hear. I mean, you definitely have been a model, not just to me and a role model and mentor, but someone to look up to, of how you've just built such a great company. I see how your colleagues and employees feel about you, and they work hard because they believe in the overall enterprise value of what you guys are creating. I always like to finish my podcast with a few lightning round questions. So quick answers to these questions, and then we'll get you on your plane back to Orange County. I mean, you said you're an artist of a different palette, but if you weren't in the real estate business, what would you be doing?
I'd probably be a full-time scuba diver. I'd be
marine biologist.
I'd go back to what I didn't do. But actually, I've got a side light now. I'll cheat a little bit. I have a biofuels business that I've helped nurture, and truly think we got a chance to do our part to save a corner of the planet. So that's probably what I'd spend my days on that if I weren't doing this.
What's the best advice someone has given you? And I think you may have mentioned it already, but
I think it's been golden rule. It's take good care of people. It's treat them with regard and respect, and because you never know when somebody's going to be able to help you or hurt you. And so, being good to all people that you come into contact with, because they might be a counterparty someday. They might be somewhere in the back of a transaction and be able to help or hurt you. And I want their help instead of on the other side.
Do you still think about deals that you didn't do and you passed up, or do you think more about deals that you did and you're like, I should never have done that deal? And what do you think more about, the one that got away or the one that you're not happy that it didn't go away?
That's a tough question. I think a lot about both, but I've got a list of the ones that got away, so I'll give my highlight of my number one deal that got away from me. Mm-hmm. I had the land where SoFi Stadium is under contract with a partner, and we were going to build the stadium. And wow. he was involved in another sporting venture that went badly for him. I'm not gonna give too many details because I don't want to give the person away, because it's never been public. And a day before we were supposed to wire $10 million hard deposit and close the piece of land, he sent an email and said, I'm out. So he was gonna build a stadium in order to get a piece of ownership. He did not own a team, but it was somebody who I mean, everybody on the call would know him, but I'm not going to give it up.
Yeah.
So that's probably my number one deal that I.
Well, that would take the cake. Yeah.
Because I had negotiated, a success fee for buying and getting entitlement, but my number one negotiation was I had lifetime seats on the 50 was part of my contract, and I'm a big sports fan, so that would have been a nice thing to have.
So have you been to SoFi?
I have. I've not been to a football game. I'm going to a game in a couple of weeks. My first football game. I saw the Rolling Stones there last year.
Okay.
It's an interesting place. I spent a lot of money for it. I'm not sure. I mean, it wasn't well rated in the stadiums. It was actually rated toward the bottom in a recent rating.
Interesting.
I think Allegiant Stadium is cooler for the money. Allegiant was built for less.
Now, Allegiant's the one in Vegas, right?
In Vegas, the home of the Raiders. Allegiant was built for less than the cost overruns on SoFi.
That's incredible. And and you're in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm in Vegas. Like a little project in Vegas too. I'm building.
You do.
Dream Las Vegas, and everybody's welcome to come and lose some money at the casino.
When will that open? When can we lose some money and go to a Raider game?
January 2025 will open.
Okay. All right. So we'll revisit this podcast from the hotel lobby. Yeah. We'll see if your prediction was right with respect to rates. And I just can't thank you enough about how generous you've been and with your time today and through the years and our golf games. And it's a pleasure to work with you and just to know you personally and to call you a friend.
Well, I would say the same, Andrew. I love that we got introduced to each other. You've been a real asset to our firm. And, in addition to, or maybe more important than the work we do together, I enjoy the friendship. And, I think you and your colleagues are super bright, capable folks, and we love working with them.
I really appreciate it. All right. Safe travels back to Orange County, and look forward to seeing you soon, hopefully on a golf course.
I'll ping you offline about that.
That sounds great. All right, Bill. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Real Talk, Real Estate Discussions with Andrew Kirsh. You can catch prior episodes at www.sklarkirsh.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing this show with others.